Hello everyone, welcome to the Make a Diary YouTube channel. Today we will go over how to find places that can help you mod your Switch Lite, installing the necessary software, and trying out some of my childhood games. Let's get started. This Switch Lite has been collecting dust in my drawer, so I decided to give it new life by modding it. Like everyone else new to this, I started looking up YouTube videos and Reddit posts on how to do it, and quickly realized this is not a trivial process. If you don't already own most of the tools, costs can add up to hundreds of dollars. Even if you do own all the equipment, the chance of failure is high due to the skill required to handle these small components. For example, this viewer had a close call that almost ruined their console. Another viewer mentioned that they wanted to pay someone to mod their Switch instead. This got me thinking maybe I can find a professional to do it for me to lower the risk. But to my surprise, there was very little information on how to get into contact with reliable modders in my area. I didn't want to ship my Switch to some unknown places and sketchy online offers. After some more research, I found that the most reliable and cost-effective approach is to contact local console repair shops. Simply Google console repair shop in your area. Even if they don't list modding as a service, there's a good chance they offer it. Just call or message to ask. When I reached out, they got back to me right away with a price I found quite reasonable, especially considering the equipment costs I'd have to cover to do it myself. As you can see my message, I wanted to provide the mod chip myself. Search for PicoFly RP2040 chip for Core and Lite on eBay. These are compatible with most Switch consoles, and check out the reviews to ensure others have successfully modded their system from a particular seller. I dropped off my Switch Lite, along with the mod chip I bought on eBay, at the console repair shop as planned. And just 2 days later, I got it back fully modded. Mind you, it's still risky. We're buying sketchy looking parts on eBay and entrusting the Switch to a stranger for a process that could potentially brick the system. Even so, it's better than attempting it myself, since I don't have the skills needed to perform the hardware modifications. Now that we have a modded Switch Lite, we can begin the software installation process that will allow us to turn this device into a proper retro handheld console. Before we begin, remember to back up your Switch Lite's SD card contents. I also bought a new SD card for this project since I wanted to install a few operating systems on the Switch Lite. You don't have to get the 1TB version like I did, but I recommend at least 250 GB for a comfortable amount of storage. At the time of recording, there's a sale going on, so you may be able to grab one for a good deal. After modding your Switch with a mod chip, you'll see a no SD card message displayed when you first turn it on. You can return to the original firmware by pressing the volume up and down together. Once it's booted, go into the Switch's system settings and check the current firmware version. This is important because we need to make sure our custom firmware pack is compatible with the Switch's firmware. As you can see here, my current Switch Lite firmware version is 13.1.0. Once you have captured the current Switch firmware version, power down the Switch by holding the power button, select Power Options, then press Turn Off. Now we can get ready to download a compatible custom firmware pack for our Switch Lite. There are several custom firmware packs available that bundle all the necessary software into a single package, so we don't have to download and configure everything manually. Today we'll be using HATS, which I think is the most complete and frequently updated custom firmware bundle available. As you can see, this release of HATS is just 3 days old at the time I'm recording this video. It supports firmware versions up to 21.1.0, which is compatible with my 13.1.0 firmware. Double check to ensure that your firmware version is supported. Before we can install the custom firmware package, we need to properly format our SD card to FAT32. You can try other formats, but many people have reported issues with corruption, so it's best to stick with FAT32. I will be using my terminal to format the SD card to FAT32 on my Mac, but you can use a tool like Rufus to do the same on Windows machine. Run disk-util list to get all the drives. As you can see here is our 1TB SD card. Now we can begin the format process. Note that this will destroy all data on the SD card. Remember to back up before proceeding. Once you've formatted the SD card to FAT32 and downloaded the HATS custom firmware bundle compatible with your Switch firmware version, unzip the bundle file. Then, copy all the files from the unzipped folder to the SD card. Now you can safely eject the SD card from your computer and insert it into your Switch. Now, you can power on the Switch. You should see the custom firmware loaded. Go ahead and select the time for your region and press OK. Before we do anything, we need to back up our original firmware just in case something happened. We can do that by going into Tools, Backup eMMC, and select eMMC Boot 0 and Boot 1. After the backup process complete, you should see something like this. Now that you created the backup, you can connect directly to the SD card using a USB cable without taking the SD card out of the Switch. Select USB tools, then connect the cable to your computer to copy the backup files we just created for safekeeping. Remember, after copy the backup folder over to your computer, you should use the Safe Eject tool to safely disconnect the SD card. Do not unplug the cable directly. Once you press Safe Eject, the switch should report that disk is ejected and you can unplug the cable. Once you finish copying the backup, we can begin the SD card partitioning process where we will allocate space for Linux, Android, games, etc. I wanted to install Android and Linux later, so I will leave a decent amount of space for those operating systems. Once you have made up your decision, press Next Step and confirm your choice. After completing the partition, go to the home screen, select MU-MMC, and create a new MU-MMC. This will allow you to create an isolated environment where you can do whatever you want, install various firmware versions, programs, theme packs, and more. Be sure to back up your original firmware keys and other important data, as bricking your console with homebrew software is a real risk. With that done, we have finished the Switch installation process and can begin to test it by playing some emulated games. I went ahead and installed Linux on my Switch Lite to run Dolphin emulator. If you are interested in the process, please let me know in the comment below, and I can cover it in the next video. Now, I will show you a few things to improve system performance to ensure a smooth gaming experience on Dolphin emulator. Before we begin, make sure your power mode is set to performance over clock all, or at least performance all, and set fan to cool mode. Then in Dolphin emulator, go to graphics settings, general tab, and enable dual core, with speed limit set to 110%. In graphics, you can test various options, but I found 2x native to be plenty sharp and fast on this screen, with the Vulkan NVIDIA GPU. There are a few more enhancements that I found to be somewhat helpful that you can copy, such as the ability to see frame rate, game speed percentage, prefer GPU heavy ops instead of CPU ops. We'll be testing the newly modded Switch Lite with one of my favorite childhood games, Fire Emblem, Path of Radiance. This video is playing at 1x speed so you can see the game's actual performance. I've turned on the frame rate and game speed displays as well. We're shooting for 100% game speed and 60 FPS. You'll notice that the frame rate occasionally dips below 60, but overall the game is very playable. This is especially impressive when you consider how small the Switch Lite is, running Linux and emulating a GameCube game on such a compact device. It's truly remarkable how far the community has come to allow us to enjoy something like this. That's it for today's video. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one.